Gary Heidnik, a name synonymous with depravity. He is known for crimes so horrific they defy easy description. His actions would later serve as a chilling inspiration for a fictional monster, Buffalo Bill, in the film The Silence of the Lambs. This is the story of Gary Heidnik, the collector of women, and his grim baby farm. Please like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Gary Heidnik was born on November 22, 1943, in Eastlake, Ohio. His early life was marked by instability. At the tender age of 3, his parents endured a traumatic divorce. He lived with his alcoholic mother until 1950. He was then sent to live with his abusive father, Michael, and a stepmother. His father subjected him to physical and psychological abuse. This included forcing him to hang urine-soaked sheets as punishment. Despite the turmoil, Heidnik was a gifted student. He possessed an IQ of 148. However, he struggled socially. His shyness and the military uniform he wore made it difficult to make friends. He became an object of ridicule, especially after a skull deformation resulting from a fall. At 14, he was sent to a military academy. Heidnik joined the army at 17. He served as a military doctor in Germany, maintaining an impeccable record. However, his mental health was deteriorating. In October 1962, he was diagnosed with schizoid personality disorder. He was required to take antipsychotic medication, specifically trifluoperazine. He received an honorable discharge with a full disability pension. His mental health continued to worsen. He spent significant time in psychiatric hospitals. He attempted suicide 13 times throughout his life. Heidnik found a semblance of peace in religion. In October 1971, he founded the United Church of God's Ministers in Philadelphia. He started with just $1,500 and 5 parishioners. The church grew significantly over the next 4 years. It attracted more worshipers and accumulated $500,000 in donations. He became known as the Hamburger Bishop for distributing food to the needy. Heidnik possessed a manipulative nature and charisma. He used these traits to his advantage. He began recruiting mentally disabled patients from the nearby Elwyn Institute. He specifically targeted and attracted female patients to his church. This manipulation would escalate into something far more sinister. His first major crime occurred in 1978. He was arrested for a brutal act against his girlfriend's sister, Maxine. He kidnapped, raped, sodomized, and tortured her. He held Maxine captive in his basement for 10 days. Following the charges, he spent 3 years in a mental institution. Heidnik was released under state supervision in 1983. Authorities described his demeanor upon release as dead silence. Despite his history and mental state, he acquired significant assets. He bought a house at 3520 North Marshall Street. He also purchased a Rolls-Royce and a Cadillac. He even registered with a marriage agency. In October 1985, he married Betty Disto, a woman from the Philippines. Soon after, his abusive and violent behavior resurfaced. He forced his wife to watch him have sex with other women. He frequently raped and psychologically abused her. A marriage ended abruptly in January 1986 when Betty managed to escape. Betty became pregnant before her escape. Heidnik also fathered a 3rd child, Gary Jr., after sexually abusing a parishioner named Gail Linkow. Gary Jr. was eventually sent to foster care. The inability to see his children seemed to fuel a dark obsession. His obsession centered on getting 10 women pregnant so he could start his own family. His goal was having a perfect breed of children from these women. He began plotting to build his own baby farm. He became known internally as the baby planter. Heidnik began preparing his house for this horrific plan. He transformed his basement into a dungeon. He boarded up and insulated the windows to prevent screams from being heard outside. He anchored heavy chains to the walls. He bought numerous padlocks. He even dug a small, shallow pit, like a well, in the ground. With his dungeon prepared, Heidnik began luring victims. He used his distinctive Rolls-Royce to find women. He primarily targeted prostitutes, promising them companionship or money. These promises were lies designed to trap them. His first victim was Josefina Rivera, a 25-year-old prostitute. He met her on Thanksgiving Day, November 25, 1986. He convinced her to come home with him. Upon entry, he immediately strangled her. Once she was unconscious, he chained her in the basement. He put her in the well to silence her screams. For 7 days, he beat, tortured, and raped her relentlessly. Heidnik continued his spree. On December 3rd, he kidnapped Sandra Lindsay, a 24-year-old patient from the Elwyn Institute. Lisa Thomas, 19, was kidnapped on December 23rd. Deborah Dudley, 23, was taken on January 2nd, 1987. Jacqueline Askins, 18, was kidnapped on January 18, 1987. His final known victim was Agnes Adams, a prostitute, kidnapped on March 23, 1987. The women endured horrific abuse and torture. They were routinely beaten, tortured, and raped. Heidnik forced them to eat dog food. He forced them to witness each other's rapes. They were locked in the well for disobedience or rebellion. He used electric cables in the well to shock victims. He later stated he tried to find something that would make them quiet. He gagged victims with duct tape. He even stuck screwdrivers in victims' ears. This was done to prevent them from hearing outside sounds. The brutal conditions led to death. Sandra Lindsay died after trying to escape. Heidnik hung her from a beam and starved her. She suffered from a very high fever before her death. Heidnik then dismembered Sandra's body. He forced the other 3 women to help him in this gruesome task. He kept her arms and legs, referring to them as dog food. He roasted her ribs in the oven. He boiled her head in a pot. The odor from this act led to neighbor complaints. He fed cooked pieces of Sandra to his captives and his dog. The women did not know what they were eating until the trial. Deborah Dudley also died. She was severely electrocuted in the well. Her death was instantaneous. Heidnik chose not to dismember her body. Instead, he abandoned her body in the Pine Barrens, New Jersey. The horror came to an end through an act of desperation and courage. Josefina Rivera managed to contact authorities. While with Heidnik, she called emergency services from a gas station. Police units quickly arrived at the house. They arrested Heidnik on the spot. Josefina explained the horrific events she and the others had endured. This led to a search of the property. Police discovered the gruesome scene in the basement. They found chained and gagged women bearing signs of torture. In the freezer, they found 12 kilos of human flesh. It was the remains of Sandra Lindsay. Heidnik's trial began in June 1988. He attempted to claim the women were already there when he bought the house. His defense attorney, Charles Peruto, attempted an insanity plea. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of his sanity. They highlighted his calculated actions and meticulous planning. His tax consultant described him as a shrewd businessman with significant financial acumen. The survivor accounts corroborated the full extent of his monstrous actions. Judge Lynn Abraham realized he was feigning mental illness. On July 1, 1988, the verdict was delivered. Heidnik was found guilty of multiple counts. He was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder. He was also convicted of 5 counts of kidnapping. The charges included 6 counts of rape. He was found guilty of 4 counts of aggravated assault. Gary Heidnik was sentenced to death. Gary Heidnik remained on death row. He was held at Rockview State Correctional Facility. His family attempted to halt his execution. They argued he was impaired and unfit. The court denied their request. Gary Heidnik was executed by lethal injection on July 6, 1999. He left behind a legacy of unimaginable cruelty. His victims endured enduring trauma. The survivors struggled immensely to rebuild their lives. Jackie Askins, one of the survivors, questioned, "Why me?" She witnessed his execution. She wanted her face to be the last thing he saw.